Good evening. As the Assistant Principal for Administration here at Santa Fe High School and representing Dr. Wright, our principal, and the other Assistant Principal for Curriculum, Mr. David Mack Rendick, we want to say welcome to Santa Fe High School's auditorium and thank you for coming tonight. There's some important things that are going to be discussed and we look forward to hearing input from the community. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and thank you for all your help in hosting us this evening. My name is Jackie Johnson. I'm Director of Communications for Alachua County Public Schools, and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I know you all have very busy lives, and there are other things you could be doing, but we appreciate you coming out, taking the time, and being willing to share your input with the school board. I want to introduce our school board members now. Immediately to my left is Tina Certain, our board chair. Our board vice chair is Dr. Leonetta McNeely. And our board members, Dr. Sarah Rockwell and Diane McGraw. Kay Abbott could not be with us here tonight. Let me give you a little bit of an idea of how things are going to go down tonight. Dr. Edwards is going to give a quick presentation about rezoning, and then I'm going to share briefly how you can walk through the interactive zoning map that we have available on our website. I think you'll find that probably a lot more useful than the static paper maps that we're able to hand out tonight. After we're done with that, it's going to be your turn. You can see we've got a microphone here. If we can ask everybody to sort of line up this way, you'll have 3 minutes. We have a timer here up front. It will be counting down, so you'll always be able to tell how much time you have left. If you would like to share some input, but you don't want to speak tonight, that is absolutely fine. As you came in, the table out front, there was an input form. You can fill that out. Drop that off at the front table. We type everything that comes into us on these input forms, and we share that with the rezoning team and with the school board members. You'll also see there's a QR code over here, and that email box, special box we set up for email messages about rezoning, so you can also share your input that way. Also at the front table, if you hadn't seen it, frequently asked questions, that is also available on our rezoning website. And I'm going to walk you through, as I show you the interactive maps, I'll also show you some of the other features of the rezoning website and give you that address as well. We are taping the meeting. That's why we have the cameras here. We have taped all of the community input sessions we've had, and that is also available on the website, and I'll show you how to get to that in just a little bit. And I do ask that when it's time, when I call everybody out, when you come up to the microphone, if you could share with us your first and your last name, we'd appreciate it very much. At this time, I'd like to turn the podium over to Dr. Edwards to share with you her presentation about the rezoning process.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. To our community members, board members, Dr. Atria and Mr. Andrew in his absence. We are, of course, continuing on with our discussions about comprehensive rezoning. Our agenda for tonight is presented on the screen above with our objectives, Policy 5120. We will mention in brevity the methodology with constraints, our data collection process, current school enrollment, sample school data, which we will look at today, High Springs, Mabane, and Santa Fe, demographic analysis, some of the rationale behind that analysis, and our considerations that we've been making along the way, as well as community input sessions. The objective is to establish geographic zone lines for schools within the district, and we would like for those to align with our student capacity and student enrollment, while we prioritize fiscal responsibility and efficiency. So when we're looking at that, we're looking at our facilities, our transportation, and personnel. So Policy 5120, we're looking at here outlines that the superintendent will periodically review the enrollment of our schools throughout the district and is able to make some recommendations to the board based on enrollment in schools, new developments that are taking place, whether we're at capacity, so on and so forth. So we look at that growth or the decline of the student population and make decisions. In the policy, there are several factors, 7, where the board members are able to justify consideration for changing zone lines. Those are inclusive of financial and administrative efficiency, the school capacity and grade level capacity at each of our schools, whether students have convenient access to those schools, and whether they are safe and efficient for transportation and travel. Also, we look at effective and appropriate instructional programs, the socioeconomic diversity among the schools, and utilization of our brick and mortar buildings, which are our physical facilities. And then finally, as we are reviewing our policy 5120, the superintendent shall recommend the board to adopt enrollment caps for all schools in the district, with priority given to those schools which are crowded. We certainly have had discussion along the way that when we began this process, we talked about schools that were 90% or above and looked at those as overcapacity. We wanted to make sure that the language was clear and that we are aligning with what is in the policy, which is schools that are at 90% through 100%, right, or up until 100, are considered crowded. And so we do utilize that 90% mark for our zoning in school choice, but we want to make sure that the community is clear that at 90% we're considered crowded and not overcapacity. Those schools that are over 100% would be considered overcapacity. So we've used some constraints, some considerations that we've taken into account when we're making decisions about making line changes to the lines in zoning. And so in the methodology, we included transportation challenges, which include the walk zones, our safe bus routes, and whether the bus routes can actually be shorter. So that length of the ride for students has been taken into account, as well as whether they're in that 2-mile walk zone that is actually considered safe. So we want to make sure that as we're outlining the 2-mile walk zones, we're also considering safe walk zones. And so, you know, families can live within 2 miles, but it could be considered hazardous if they had to cross a major highway, for instance, within those 2 miles in order to get to a school. Our school capacity is based on the permanent capacity. Those are the brick and mortar buildings that I've mentioned earlier. So our portable spaces would not be inclusive in that number, but we are taking into account what is happening with portables on campus. We have looked at, as I will talk in just a few moments, about where we own and lease portables, what is happening with computer labs on our campuses, as well as the enrollment in our magnet programs, and the consideration of when students are actually able to participate in schools, especially those that are over capacity, in order to receive zoning exemptions or acceptance in magnet programs. So for our transportation challenges, our budgetary considerations for that is of course, looking at how we are operating currently, which is at $11,800,000 to provide transportation for the students across Alachua County. And so as we look at that, we recognize that changes to that budget would have to include where students are moving from. If they were a bus rider and now they're moving to a school where they're within a walk zone, then there is a reduction. Whether the bus route is shorter may be a reduction due to the mileage and gas. We're thinking about the number of drivers that we have. But all of those are taken into account. And in some instances, we may have to see where monies have to be redistributed in order to continue transportation for students, or has it been removed altogether? The maintenance of those buses is also included in the consideration. For school capacity, as mentioned earlier, we definitely have considered our portables. We know that across our school campuses on our sites, we have 324 portables on our various campuses. 2/3 of those portables are owned by Alachua County Public Schools, and the remaining third are rented. But when we look at the cost for portables, our district is paying $835,000 to make sure that we're able to maintain portables at schools. We have an additional 33 portables that are on non-school sites at places such as Civia Center, transportation, so more of the office or personnel spaces across campus. So in our discussions, several things have arisen in terms of being revealed in our data sets, which is the discussion about one-to-one technology at schools. So all of our middle schools currently have one-to-one technology. We have additional 4 schools that just came online with one-to-ones, meaning that each of the students who are at the school will have access to laptops. And so when those children have one-to-one, it may be that they don't need to have a hardwired lab in the school, but not always is it indicative of that. There are going to be times where we couldn't necessarily move a hardwire lab because of the instructional programs and what is required in order to move students around in the best way to meet some of those needs of children. And so we have to look at that. Our total number of labs are 118 across the district that are considered hardwired labs. So they're desktops typically in those computer labs on campus. For our magnet programs, as we've looked at this process, data has emerged, kind of leading us into asking more questions about processes that we use within the district, looking at caps in programs. So if we have a school that is over capacity, but we're allowing for a large number of students to enter into that school, we have to think about, whether that is a process we should continue. So for instance, if we have school X and there are 2,000 children at that school, and we're allowing for 150 children to come in ninth grade each year, and of those 150, many of them are not zoned for the school, we have to look at and make determinations as a district as to whether we need to minimize the number of students that we allow to enroll at the ninth grade year for a school that is over capacity. So we're looking at those constraints as well as our processes for zoning exemptions in places where we are crowded. When we began the comprehensive rezoning process for our school district, we began with a data set that utilized data from February of 2023 that was based off of our FTE at the time. And so the first set of information that had been released to the community was based on that data set. The next set of data that we shared, however, was more recent data that came from the 10-day count for this school year for 23-24, and that came on August 23rd, 2023. So all of the data that we have been looking at moving forward and that you see now is as of 8/23/23. When we are presenting information related to the zones for our schools, we also look at that data set having removed those students who would have been zoned to attend a private or charter school. And so when we're looking at our proposed enrollments or current enrollments, unless we have indicated that the private and charter school students are included, they have been pulled from that data so that it really reflects the children who are attending public schools in a zoned area and capturing that information. The next set of data that we move forward to is to then look at that and see what are the demographics for those students. So when we look at the data set, now we're trying to determine how many students are considered economically disadvantaged, for instance, which would be based upon the codes for free and reduced lunch. How many of those students may be students who have disabilities? And so within the students with disabilities coding, gifted students are not included. All students, though, who have an IEP that may be labeled in any way other than gifted are captured in that number. And then also we have a race. So we're looking at demographics for our students who fulfill all of our race categories. And then finally, the data sets as we move forward are to look at our student enrollment, which is the current enrollment, and our proposed student enrollment, and the demographics that align with those, and being able to see where shifts have occurred as we move students from one school to another. Those are the data collection processes that we have used thus far. And as we continue on, of course, things can always change if we're changing our data sets. The current school enrollment as of 8/23/23, if you watched the meeting, or I don't even know if it's posted yet, but if you were present at Gainesville High School, you would note that there were some errors in our percentage rate in one of the columns. This current school enrollment sheet actually was not one that was created by DRMP, but was created by our school district, ACPS. We went back to do the recalculations, made sure that they had the alignment as the other forms that everyone had been receiving up until now, so that you can compare the lines going across for what has also been presented by our zones for DRMP. And so this is done with the Excel calculation. When we look at the others and what we had before, they may have been calculated by individual and not necessarily by the calculation that came from the actual sheet. And so we wanted to make sure that those errors are not there, so they have been rerun and presented now as a new form. In this actual sheet with current school enrollment, what you'll have is our school numbers, the capacity in the school, which is the seats that we have at each school based on the physical capacity, the number of students enrolled, and then thereby giving us what the actual percentage is for the capacity of enrollment as of 8/23/23. We must keep in mind that there are students who have been enrolling and potentially have withdrawn since August 23rd. And so that would make a fluctuation in the numbers. The next couple of slides are really based on the sample sets for particular schools. If we're looking at High Springs, this is the elementary level. First column on the left would list High Springs as the first school, and then there are a number of schools that are listed below it. Each one of those schools are schools for which a student is actually attending a school other than High Springs. If you're looking at the second column at the top, it will show that we have 553 students, but of those students, 6 are attending Alachua Elementary, 4 are attending Newberry, 4 attending Foster, and so on down the list. So what you'll have at the bottom of the column in the green is the total number of students who are actually zoned to attend High Springs, which is 581. On the far right-hand column, you have what is proposed based on the new zones. So where we have currently existing students in our current zones is 553. What is proposed for 24-25 is 508 students. We then, however, look at the number of students who would, if things were kept in the same format, we look at the number of students who would be proposed to move to other schools. So if those Alachua students were still going to Alachua, then there would be 536 students total. So it drops from 553 to 508 in the actual number with the number of students attending other schools. It moves from 581 in the green bar to 536. So we have one of these for each of our schools. The same process is followed for each one. For High Springs Middle School, it has 297 students. We have several students attending other schools, such as Oakview, Mabane, Howard Bishop, Hawthorne Middle High School. And so that brings the total to a little over 300. And then next year, the reduction would move those students from 297 to 266. And the bottom reduction would be 281. When we look at Mabane, it would be the same process. So we're looking at that top number, 340. Is that 3?
Get this paper. We don't have any of them.
Yes, you do not. We do not have them, and they are not available until as we're going into our next, because they'll consistently change. And when we had discussions about that, it becomes really confusing if we put out 40 of these and then we change them and then we change, because every time we change the data, these sheets change. We are using them as sample sets to show people the process and what the data is looking like, but we have not provided it for anyone other than our board members and staff. And so 346 students at Mabane. You can see the number of children who are actually zoned for Mabane Middle School, but attending other schools, which then shows you that 478 total students are really zoned there, but not all attending there. If you move to the far right-hand column, this is the proposed line. So now we look at the reduction being 348, but you have to take into account number of students attending other schools, and 607 would be the total. So at Mabane, the total in the green moves from 478 to 607. Where students are shifting in each one of those schools becomes a big deal in doing the total counts for each one of those numbers. And so we look at those sample sets for the proposed numbers as we move forward. And then Santa Fe High School. Santa Fe High School currently has 941 students attending of the 1,143 students who are zoned. And in the 24-25 school year, in the proposed area, expected that it would fall just very short, about 4 students to 937. But then as we look at those other zones, it brings the total number up to 1224. Our demographics for students currently attending a zoned public school. This is where I was making mention of within the data set that you are looking at. Our private and charter school students are not included here. These are only students in a zoned area that are currently attending a public school in Alachua County. What you see in the yellow are those schools that are over capacity. So it's highlighting the schools that are currently over capacity for our zoned public schools. You can also see the demographics. You can see what percentage of overcapacity, the demographics for economically disadvantaged, as well as race and students with disabilities. We have the magnet percentages listed there as well. So as you look at your schools and you follow those across, you're able to see exactly what those percentages look like now. The next sheet is the same exact outline. However, it takes into account proposed students attending public zone schools with the expectation that, as we shared here in the 24-25 school year, that those same students were continuing on with their public and private schools. This would be what is proposed for the 24-25 school year. You'll see that there are still schools that are highlighted in yellow as being over capacity, but the amount over capacity has been reduced. You also need to look to see what may have changed or fluctuated in terms of the economic disadvantage, race, disabilities, so on and so forth. And so this kind of gives an outlook as to what is happening with our proposed students. So there is rationale for the data analysis that we've considered. We've talked about already that the data is coming from August 23rd. But the previous maps that were first shared were from data that was from February 23, so that's important because you can't compare them and expect for them to be exact. We look at the process that the agency whom we are working with, which is DRMP, who is doing the data analysis for us, is using, which is geocoding. So it is taking the actual addresses of the students that we provide for them through our Skyward database system, and then it is layering on top of the 911 addresses in the areas to pinpoint exact locations. And they go through a pretty tedious process to make sure that they can get as exact as possible the addresses for all of the students who are in our district. Charter and private school assumptions. There are some things that we wanted to make sure that the community realized, which is our students who are currently attending a charter or private school, although they are not currently zoned for Alachua County Public Schools, as we look at various data, we have to take them into account because they have every right to attend the schools if they so choose. We have to provide rules for for the agency in terms of how we're looking at proposing who would be attending schools in the future. We also wanted to highlight that within the list that you have, you do not see Sidney Lanier, Aquin Jones, or Lofton because our students are not zoned to those schools. They apply or are assigned at those various schools. There are some outliers. So for the people who are digging very deeply into data, who are very precise in terms of looking at the measurements, there was a small number of students who did not have race information attached to their student record. And because of that, we want to make sure that when people are trying to align numbers, if it is not totaling to 100, that can be an account for that. We also know that there are some students who you may look at and say, well, this child is in middle school. How come, it's reflecting a high school on the middle school sheet, for instance, or in that number? And that is because we do have students who are in middle school who take classes on a high school campus. And so there are students who, for instance, may go from Lincoln and take a French class at Eastside. Those kids will show up on high school for that course that they're taking at high school, and so we have taken that into account as well. And then there are some data descriptors. We've talked about the values for the ESC field and how gifted is not included there. For our economically disadvantaged, those are the lunch status fields that we have provided for them to pull data for our students. Our program and exception codes, inclusive of district programs, programs that may have functional programs for students with disabilities. It may be our alternative school programs based on behavior, assignments that we have for students, magnet programs for which children have enrolled, zoning exemptions that have been awarded for a multitude of reasons. We have taken all of those into account. You can see the reason codes on the actual bottom where we have choice and opportunity scholarships, our character counts program, our ESOL programs that are at Parker, Westwood, and GHS. And keeping all of that in mind makes for a very layered process through comprehensive rezoning. And so there are a couple of things that have been accomplished through the rezoning process thus far. One of those has been the correction of some of the maps that were already in existence and looking at parcel lines that have existed. And DRMP has gone in and made changes to those parcel lines to clarify and to basically have cleaner maps. It does not impact the zones. Our zone lines have moved more east because of the capacity that we have in the east. So there has been a shift to move the schools into the more or the less populated areas. And so that has been accomplished to date. It is really important that people understand that making those shifts for the zone lines does not make our schools balance. It provides the lines that are available in areas within a geographic area for which students go to school, but all of the other things that we would have to take into account really impact the balance. So when we're looking at the fiscal responsibility, we're looking at what the cost is for transportation, what the cost is for portables, what is happening with magnet programs, and all of those things, they impact really what's happening with zoning. As we move forward, DRMP will be visiting with our district on Monday at the workshop at the board at 10 a.m. And one of the things that we will be able to share at that point as well is how our concurrency actually impacts these numbers and what the expectation is in terms of numbers for each of our zones. So that information will be available as well. The processes that we use within the district have really been highlighted as we've been going through data, having discussions, working with various departments. It is clear that we really need to look into the processes that we use to make sure that when we go through the comprehensive rezoning process, that there are not things that could impact numbers significantly. A for instance would be students who enter into a magnet program in their 9th grade year. They continue on with that program in 10th grade, and at the end of their 10th grade year or 11th grade year, they decide that they want to withdraw from the program. And that child who is in the magnet program is also not zoned for that school, should be returning to their zone school and not remaining at the school for which they were assigned because of the magnet. And so we noticed that as we were going through this process that there were many students who were dropping from magnet programs but not leaving from their schools. Those are things that we need to make sure are cleaned up because they impact the numbers. When a student is in a magnet program and they are dismissed from that program or withdraw from the program, they are expected to return to their zone school. So there are examples of different processes that we follow as a district that we want to make sure are clarified and look at what the impact has been on that.
Armando Grundy Gomez, my question is, you're talking about it's impossible for actual enrollment to be predicted. So my question to you is, how are other districts within the state of Florida predicting enrollment? And if other districts, how they're doing it, why are we not doing it? And if we're not doing it, why?
We can't predict it precisely. And so we have to provide for DRMP what the rules would be as we make predictions. And so we will be able to share, for instance, what kids we are keeping in our prediction for our school zones. Did we say that students who had zoning exemptions would be able to remain at their school in the next school year? That would be part of the rule that they use to make a prediction about what the number would look like next year. And so for each one of our reason codes that we had to provide a rule for them to state whether those students would be expected to remain at a school, whether they would progress from 5th to 6th grade, from 8th to 9th grade, and change schools. And so we provide those rules that help outline what that looks like. So every prediction in any given district, it could change based upon what the rules are that you provide. It's not precise, but there definitely will be a prediction. Other considerations, of course, that we want to take into account is that schools such as Littlewood that are going through revitalization will be coming back online in the 25-26 school year with additional seats. Westwood's will be back on their campus in the brick and mortar building next year. And then there is just a number of programs that are available and schooling options available to parents. And so even for our students who are currently attending our schools, we have to keep in mind that those could shift, right? There are at any point in time, a parent could make the decision that their child would attend a private school or utilize a voucher or attend online virtual school. And so there are just very many factors we take into account. Several people have asked questions about dual enrollment, and we have considered that for our high schools. We are counting our dual enrollment students in terms of the overall numbers. This is the final community input session, at least as of now. I can't say there won't be more. That will be at the at the will of the board, but I'm going to turn it back over into the hands of Jackie Johnson. Thank you.
There will certainly be future opportunities for the public to weigh in on this besides the email that we talked about in the input forms. And I'll be able to show you the calendar for those meetings on the district website. So I just want to walk you through the rezoning page and some of the resources that you can find there. And you can get to it a number of ways. You can see the one box right there, updated rezoning. You just click on the red box underneath. That gets you to the rezoning page, and then there's a little red tab up in the corner. We're going to take you now to the actual rezoning page. That's what it looks like. And you can see there are a number of links along the left-hand side. So, for example, frequently asked questions. And we are updating that as we hear questions from the public at these input sessions. We say, oh, that's a good question. We're going to add that to our frequently asked questions. The proposed new zone maps, I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. Demographic data, the charts that you got up front tonight, they are available on that site. These are still proposed maps and proposed numbers. This doesn't get voted on until December 5th. Tweaks can be made throughout this process. So we are continually updating. We're now on our third iteration of maps. And my guess is there will probably be more. That's where we're posting the most updated information, the demographic data and the maps you can find on that website. You can find tonight's presentation and all previous presentations. Dr. Edwards' presentation tonight was customized for this area. It had the High Springs numbers. It had the Santa Fe numbers. We've done that at other public hearings that we've had. So you can see the presentations from the previous meetings if you're interested in what's going on in those areas. You can also see a schedule of upcoming meetings. Tonight will be our last, right now, scheduled community input session. But we have many other meetings scheduled. So, for example, Dr. Edwards mentioned the rezoning workshop, board workshop that's happening on Monday. The next day is the first reading. There is a process that you have to follow under state law before you adopt a new policy, and zone lines are a policy. It's a three-step process. You have the first reading at a meeting where the board agrees to advertise what's being proposed. Then there is another public hearing that will take place at the school board headquarters before the board actually is scheduled to vote on December 5th. So this doesn't get decided until December 5th. Now let's go on and take a look at the maps. You have two options. You have the static maps, and you got copies of those at the front table. They're hard to read though, aren't they? You can't zoom in. You may not be able to tell street signs or other landmarks that help you pinpoint your particular address or some other address that you're looking at. So we have a lookup system and interactive maps available in both English and in Spanish. So let's take a look at the interactive map. And what we went ahead and did was we plugged in that pink corner there, the address for the district office, which is 620 East University Avenue in Gainesville. So what it does is that little red tab pinpoints that particular address. And what it does is show you a couple of things, and you can add layers, take away layers, whatever you want to do. But so you can see those zones covered or are surrounded in dark black. Those are the current zones for that particular address. See the yellow? Aton just added another layer. That shows the proposed zones for elementary school for that. You can do the same thing for middle. You can do the same thing for high school. So Aton's going to run us through that. So there you can see the bold black outline is where the current middle school zone for that address, and what's in pink, purple, lavender, whatever, is the proposed zone. And again, I stress proposed. These won't be final until the evening of December 5th. Aton, can you kind of show everybody zooming in how much more detailed the maps get? You get right into street addresses and individual houses and individual buildings. It's really much more detailed, and you can move the map around. So we wanted to make sure that you knew that was there and how you can take advantage of that. Terrific. Okay. So at this point, we want to turn it over to you. I'm going to go sit down in my chair, and I'm going to be the one who's manning the timer. So if you'll give me a moment to get set up. But then anybody who's interested in speaking, if you'll begin lining up, you can just kind of start a line back here. And again, I remind you to say your first and last name when you come up to speak to the board.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Brothers. I am here representing the neighborhoods of Caraway. Not the magnet program tonight, ladies. Y'all don't have to hear about the Academy of Finance and our wishes and our students and parents. But again, I'm speaking as a parent and as a community member. I have been tasked by our 39 homeowners, to come and speak to you and tell you that we are the blue little part across from Jonesville Park that is being rezoned from Oakview and Newberry High School to Mabane and Santa Fe High School. And I got to tell you, I was like, okay, I'm a Alachua County public school employee. I very much believe in public schools, but I got to tell you, it was kind of hard to see going from Newberry, Oakview, the CAP program, to Mabane and Santa Fe. So we would like, and this is the community speaking, we would like you all to consider possibly moving us to Fort Clark, which is only 4.5 miles away from our community. Turnberry Lakes is across the street from us, and they are zoned for Fort Clark. We're zoned Meadowbrook for elementary, and to go from Meadowbrook to Mabane, I know that it's going to cause a lot of mental health issues with our children because they will leave all their friends. Because there's very small part of Meadowbrook rather, that will be going to Mabane and Santa Fe. And you all know how important that is. So we would like you all to consider changing from Mabane to Fort Clark, which again is only 4.5 miles away. With transportation problems, you know, you have a bus that goes right across the street from us, and we have 39 in our neighborhood, and then you also have Belmont. But again, it's that blue section that got moved from Newberry to Alachua. And there are, I believe, better, closer, and more reasonable places for our children to go to school. And we have a very small community. I know Belmont is a little bit bigger, and hopefully they will also reach out and share their concern. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Brothers.
Good evening, Beverly Wonders. My question I have a question about capacity. So based on the Florida Department of Education, section 1002.31 Florida statute states each district school board and charter school must adopt a controlled open enrollment plan that allows a parent from any school district in the state to enroll his or her child in and transport his or her child to any public school that has not reached capacity. So is it my understanding that Alachua County's definition of capacity is over 90%?
That's what
Okay,
we, that's
over
what,
90% is
our,
what we're
is where
using
we restrict
capacity.
capacity. Yeah,
Okay,
we restrict choice
so,
enrollment.
and then in looking at the proposed school zone data, at least the current one. So any school less than 90% in the proposed should open up the opportunity for school choice permissions, right?
According to existing policy, that choice applications can be considered for schools that are less than 90% capacity.
And is it Alachua County's historical record to generally allow that if it's less than 90%?
I'm not, they're allowed, but I don't want to get into dialogue and that. There's an application process and things
Right.
get considered. So I can't tell you if you submit a choice application that it will automatically be approved because we don't know, I don't, as a board member, don't know how many choice applications may come. So, but there is a policy that is in place.
Right.
So that we comply with that standard where we are considering choice applications.
Okay,
So that is-
but if it's less than 90%, then there's not a reason it should be disapproved.
Well, there could be a reason it would be disapproved because you can get more applications to come up. It could also consider a student's attendance and all. There are a lot of criteria that go into that. Transportation, because when you get choice, you have to provide your own transportation and things of that
Well,
nature.
sure,
So,
I think that's
something, I'm
encompassed
saying
in the
those are things that
choice.
are considered
Right,
as
but
well.
that's on the
So,
parents' end and the school board's
so,
not.
so I can't tell you right now if you're asking me if you do a choice that yes, it will be approved or no, it wouldn't. I can't tell you that. You'd have to do the application. It would be considered, but that is the policy. Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing us to speak today. I really appreciate it. My name is Jennifer Volk. I am a single parent of 5 children. I have twins who are zoned and go to Santa Fe High School. I have a daughter who's at Mabane, and then I also have twins who currently go to Talbot. My middle daughter went through Talbot also. I was unhoused from 2016 up until I purchased my home in Whitney in 2021, and I made my children the promise that we would be here, you would go to these schools, we would have no more upset, no more sleeping on people's floors and couches. We had a storm that destroyed our home, and that's why we were unhoused. So we are currently at Whitney. My children do attend Talbot, and currently the proposed map shows that they will be switched to Stephen Foster. Now, Whitney is 3.5 miles from Talbot. There is a straight shot through 93rd to 43rd, and it takes me about 8 minutes to get to the school. If we were to be put at Stephen Foster, there's at least a 20-minute commute from my home, considering the 3 additional traffic lights that we would have, the heavier traffic from southbound from Alachua on 441 into Gainesville, where you'd have to turn left onto 441 in order to get to 6th. Then there's traffic from 53rd coming both ways onto 441, and then there's the merge at 6th, and then there's the traffic at 39th. Now, we all know that the busing system has been really terrible the past 3 years, and I know that that has its own reasons, and it doesn't really have to do as much with rezoning as it does with, having enough bus drivers pay and all of that. But I was able to purchase my home at Whitney because I moved up through the ranks at Publix and I obtained a management position. However, because of the bus system, I was unable to get my kids in school. They were threatening me with courts, not getting my kids to school, which was no fault of my own. I literally quit my job to take my kids to school, and I do that every day because the bus system is so unreliable at this point. Now, if I had to take my children to Foster, I would have to drive 20 minutes south at least to get them to Foster, and then 20 minutes back, and then into Alachua to get my kids to Mabane and to Santa Fe. And I'm doing this 4 days a week at this point because of the bus system. So that's one of my reasons for not wanting to be switched from Talbot to Foster. Talbot is just much more convenient for us parents, and there's a few of us there that have children at Talbot, Mabane, and Santa Fe. And so I know that this, and I do speak on behalf of all of them. They have asked me to come here today, and we've all come together and come up with all of these concerns. Another parent had mentioned that when we're rezoned, our children are not going to step up to middle and high school with the children that they're in school with in elementary school. So if my children end up going to Foster, they're not going to end up going to Mabane and Santa Fe with any of the kids that they're currently with. That was not 3 minutes, was it? Oh my God, I looked at it was 114. So anyway, that was the thing. There's a lot of, socially and emotional issues that are going to come about from this switch. And I just feel like that the 15 children that are in elementary school, it's about 15 children in elementary school that live in Whitney, has such a small effect. There's only an 84 and 85% capacity at Talbot right now, and with the change, it doesn't change it that much. Also, there are the parents who live on the 39th corridor who are being
Ms.
rezoned
Volke,
from
I hate to
Meadowbrook.
cut you off, but if I
Yeah.
let you continue to go, I'll
And
have to let
so
everyone.
I've actually, here, there's a copy for each one of you that states all of these points. It's really 3 minutes, that was so quick.
Thank you. No worries. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. My name is Cheyenne Witt. We are zoned for the High Springs Community School, and right now we are right at 3 miles from the school. And the new zone's going to put us to Alachua. We'll add to about 14 miles to drive them to school compared to 3 miles. We'll also have to get on I-75, which is not something I prefer to do. First thing in the morning is taking children to school and all that. We're literally a straight shot. I mean, we pull our driveway, we pull in High Springs Community. If you look at the map where the school is, they grabbed more of the south side of High Springs and they pulled from the north side. It literally put 2 houses down. They're in the limit. I'm right outside the limit. So it's really going to hurt my family, which both of my children have. One's an IEP program. The other one is actually being tested now for reading comprehension. To see if he's going to have to be in the IEP. So this is really going to take an effect to us. So I'm just asking if possibly we can look at the north side of the map and just maybe see how many kids we have in that area and how much it's going to affect it, because it will take us from, like I said, a 3 mile straight drive to High Springs Community to about a 14-mile drive getting on I-75. And if we don't take I-75 and we go through High Springs and around, then that just adds that many more mileage, which puts us at about 20 miles. So we're just hopefully can maybe look at the map and maybe see the children in that area and see the straight shot to High Springs Community School. Because where the school is in the map, it's not centered. You can see how far it's got pulled to the south. And I understand because Newberry's overpopulated, so they're trying to grab more of that area. But I think it's hurting the kids on the north end side because it's going to add a lot of drive time for buses, everything. It's going to add a lot for buses. So I just think if we can move that maybe a little or take a look at it, that'd be very appreciated.
Thank you,
Thank y'all
Mr.
very
Witt.
much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Board members, appreciate being here. My name's Mark Cunningham, and our neighborhood really doesn't have a name, but we are off of 130th and 129th Street, just off of 39th Avenue. So the address of my home is 4410 Northwest 129th Street. We're a relatively small neighborhood. There's maybe 15 houses there. And like the first speaker, we're zoned for Meadowbrook. We're right on the, but we're right on the border of being zoned for Mebane. So our kids go to Meadowbrook, but then are zoned for Mebane. And we're only about 3 miles from Fort Clark right now. And so what I'm hoping you all could consider is our neighborhood. We're just a couple streets coming north off of 39th. So we're about the last little group of homes before having to go all the way around onto 241. So if our neighborhood could be included in the Mebane, the Fort Clark and Buchholz zoning, it would be adding just a few, maybe 15 more homes. Otherwise, we're going 10 plus miles to Mebane and Santa Fe. And as the first speaker mentioned, all their friends are, they've been going to Meadowbrook with all their friends, and they're among the few that are going from Meadowbrook then to Mebane. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
Hi, thank you for your time tonight. My name's Brandy Nunn. I'm just here kind of to speak on behalf of actually all these kids. I appreciate all the hard work you ladies are doing, and gentlemen, and all the numbers and stuff. I just want you guys to realize that our kids are not numbers. They're actually people, and that we, I think we're we as parents are more worried about what is going to happen mentally and how we're going to have to respond to this. Ironically, you guys have put out several seminars on mental health of our children, which I've paid a little bit of attention to during this process. And somebody said something really important. She had given us actually 6 important things that our kids need to be resilient. And 4 of them, I think, ironically, relate to what you guys are doing, and I just hope that you guys think about them. One was a secure base. I'm worried, right? We're taking away their secure base. Some of these kids may be moved from their friends, their education, also their friendships. Like they said in previous speakers, some will be taken away from friendships they've had for a very long time. And then social competencies. Those were some of the 4 that I thought were most important of the 6 related to this process you guys are going through. So I would just kind of encourage you guys to think about our kids more as people and not as numbers. And I encourage you to not approve the new lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nunn.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jeannie Danner. I live in the Hamilton Heights neighborhood. My husband and I purchased our home in that neighborhood specifically for the school district, for the elementary school zone for that location. Our daughter is now 4, and next year when this is scheduled to shake things up, she will be 5 and she'll be starting kindergarten. And I am in no way comfortable sending her to a school where a major upshake like that is happening. As the previous speaker had said, it does have an impact on the children. They can feel the stress, they notice the chaos, and I'm not going to do that to my child. So my husband and I, what we will do, and what I have heard many parents in our neighborhood will do, is they're going to opt for private school. So just please consider that. It's not something that we would be able to financially afford easily. So that will be affecting us in that way. So just please consider that. In addition, I know this is minor compared to the psychological impacts, which is my major concern. Our location to Hidden Oak, which is the school that we're currently zoned for, and the proposed school zone doesn't change the population of that school at all. It's a lot easier for us to access. We don't have to go towards the interstate, which, as you know, it backs up on Newberry Road in that area, and headed south is just not going to be convenient for my husband or I to get our child to school. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Denner.
Good evening. I'm Annalise Brits. I have 2 kids, one in Gainesville High School. He's in 2 magnet programs there, and one in High Springs Community School. My main concerns that I have is you're pulling everyone east because the schools on the east are underpopulated. Do you know why they're underpopulated? Because they have bad school ratings. So everyone moves to the west side of the county where the better school ratings are. All you're going to do is you are going to let the migration start all over again, and in 5 or 10 years' time, you're going to sit with exactly the same problem. You need to start working at the root cause, which is bad education in those schools. You already have a lack of teachers. Now you're sending people that it needs to go to Mebane Middle School. You're going to send kids there that's coming from a school with great teachers that really care about them. Not that the teachers in Mebane don't care about their students, but it seems that there's a lack of academic culture there. If you look at the school grading system, they do worse on the FSA tests, all of those kinds of things that you use to grade the schools. Now my kid needs to go there when I specifically moved and paid a lot of money to get a house in High Springs where my kid can go there to a good academic school. My second point is you say that those schools are underutilized, and because of overpopulation in places like Gainesville High School, you're going to curb the amount of people that get allowed into the magnet program that is not inside the school zone. isn't it a better idea to maybe put extra magnet programs in the underutilized schools and give more kids in Alachua County the benefit of actually not having to do double A's after school and actually being able to go to a university straight out of school instead of adding up to all of the parents already having to borrow money to send kids to university, adding an extra $5,000 because kids need an AA before they can get into university because the school system don't provide the proper education to any of those kids. That's the reason why the magnet programs are so full, because it's the only way our kids get the proper education. Then, like the previous lady said, mental health. You have made a big hoo-ha about it this year with workshops and things. But the minute you start working on rezoning, you sort of just squash all of that mental health. It's just down the drain. How do you think a kid that's going to be a senior next year is going to feel if he now had 4 years with his friends, playing on a football team, things like that? Now he gets plucked out, tossed away into another school. You think that kid's going to enjoy his school year? You think he's going to make friends in that final year? No.
Ms. Fritz, I just would like to tell you that fifth graders, if rising fifth graders, rising eighth graders, and rising 12th graders get to remain at their school, they're grandfathered in. They don't have to go to the new school rezone unless they choose to do that.
I do have one suggestion maybe. Why don't you do the rezoning systematically, where you rezone for all incoming students and let the other students stay with their friends until they leave that school and have to go to a new middle school or a new high school?
Matt, you started before I started.
Hang on just a moment, I'll get you restarted.
Thank you. Armando Grundy Gomez. Madam Chair, I have a couple of questions, and it's important about using data. I understand we say we're not using numbers and we want to talk about being human beings. However, here's a question for all of you, and it's important because I want to know how these maps reduce overcrowding and how they save us money, because you all have stated that's a goal, and the purpose and goal is to, we've been unable to get the answers to those questions, which is why I asked Ms. Edwards that question earlier. And being that we're in education, it's important to show your work. So I'm going to ask you all this question. Will these maps reduce the number of overcrowded schools? How do we know? Show your work. Will these newly drawn maps save our district money? How do we know? Show your work. Will these new school districts reduce transportation cost and increase efficiency? I know something about that as a civil engineer. I also know that about that working in transportation and know how to do that. So if so, and it's going to truly show efficiency, show us the work. Because I don't believe in anecdotal feedback if you don't have data to back it up. That's one. So it's kind of like an analogy if it's here, because when I asked the question about how it's impossible to show future enrollment, if someone were building an airplane, would you want to know, you would want to fly it on, before you fly on it, you want to know it's safe. And the way they're handling this rezoning process, it's like building a plane and showing some data, but never answering either of those questions that I've just asked you. Why would anybody want to get on that plane if they don't know it's safe? You would not. Neither would any of you up here. So to say, when I asked the question to Ms. Edwards about future enrollment, other districts, number one, the slide talks about it's impossible. Well, the assumption is you look past the trends and behaviors of what it is, and we have historic data about whether families choose to go to their own schools or to go to a different one. So if you use information and just make guesstimates or guesses about it, you just want to see how they'll behave in the future. You use historic trends, and you all actually have that data to support it. This isn't a got you, but we're so busy up there talking about things that don't matter. We want to, talk about rhetoric all the time, whether it be behavior or this and this and that, or you all fighting amongst each other. This is tangible stuff that's affecting. You all can't answer things that actually matter that are impacting these people's lives, but you go through this. We're not having really robust discussion when it comes to rezoning, and we're having really mediocrity feedback, whether it be from levels of administrators, because you're not using data. It's obvious. It's obvious, and anybody that can read data, a half-nat's brain could see that you all are rushing this process. We know 3 of you are going to vote for it anyway, and it's going to go and shove it down our throats. So I think based on the report, 55% of families zoned to go to Lake Forest actually attend there. 45% of others that want to attend to Lake Forest don't live there, will be bused over there. So what you're telling these people is, just trust me. I don't need to have data, just trust us. No, I want you to give us data and back it up and show your work. And since I can't really seem to get tangible answers, whether it be from the superintendent, I'm asking you all to get it because we don't get straight answers. And your people don't read data. They can't. It's obvious.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez-Wendy.
Hello, my name is Kelly Wins. I am a parent of a student at Mabane. She also attended Alachua Elementary and Irby Elementary, and I just wanted to first of all say how happy we have been at all of our schools in Alachua. I also wanted to say that I have been in the shoes of the parents who are worried about the rezone. Where we live, we're not changing our zone at all, but we are 3.2 miles from Meadowbrook Elementary. When my daughter was entering kindergarten and entering Alachua, I prayed. I tried to get her into Meadowbrook by doing a zoning exemption. I did everything I could to be denied because I was worried about the rumors that were said about those schools. And I don't have the money to send my daughter to a private school. So we went to the schools, and as I said, we were so happy. We could not have been happier at these schools. So that's to be said. But I'm 3.2 miles from Meadowbrook. I was 6.4 miles, double the distance to go to Alachua. And so just so you know my distance, I did have to go much further, twice the distance. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that our kids, yes, I understand that making friends and there is some mental health and some children it may affect more than others, but I have to say that they're very flexible and they're making friends at their new school. Finally, I wanted to say that the rezone, I hope that what it's going to do is send students to the schools so they're supposed to go there. And one of the reasons that parents are saying that our school grades are low is because the parents who can pull their kids out of their school and get a zoning exemption do. And so you are becoming part of the problem when you pull your child from our schools. Be part of the solution. That's just kind of my mantra. Be part of the solution. Send your child to the school they're zoned for and be a part of the school and make a difference. Go Mabane Mustangs.
Thank you, Ms. Wins.
Hi, so Terry Mueller. I'm also at Mabane.
Would you raise the mic for her, please, Ms. Johnson?
I'm too.
The tall people.
Sorry about that.
No, I think that's us. Maybe we should.
Okay.
Okay.
So is that better?
For you, yes. I didn't want you to be.
So Terry Mueller. I have a sixth grader at Mabane. I pretty much will echo everything Kelly said. I did fall suit. We went to Irby. I was terrified to send my son to Alachua, only due to word of mouth. There was nothing that showed that Alachua Elementary was poor or bad, besides the grades, which as part of the PTA, we've been trying to figure out how this grading system works to actually label these schools, because that, I think, is what is influencing a lot of people's opinions. But when we moved out of our private school that we went to for third, fourth, and fifth, we've now come to Mabane. I feel like the way to make things better is our aim as a PTSA, is to basically get rid of that reputation. We're trying to rebuild it. We're trying to build community, and I think that's what we've got to do. And I think that's what a lot of these new parents could help us do. I know how great High Springs PTA is. I know how much money they can raise. Those parents could actually come and help with our school. So one of my proposals would be, I feel like, and we've talked about it as the PTSA, is we would like to go to High Springs and let them see us and see that we're not horrible people. We're here to help your children do better in school and support them. So I don't know if that's possibilities to have open houses. Mabane has one of the best auditoriums and best gyms in the county, I believe. And I think we could show people that. So that's my proposal. So thank you.
I should have come up there. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, my name is Angela Casper, and I also have a daughter at Mabane. She is in the magnet program. We live in the Jonesville area off of Newberry. We chose to go to Mebane for the magnet program. Both my daughters also went to Meadowbrook, so I know there's some Meadowbrook families here. We love Meadowbrook. Our neighborhood is being rezoned to Terwilliger. Well, not thankfully, but my daughter will be grandfathered in because she's going in the 5th grade. So that would not affect us. But so just like the other lady said, we love Mebane. It was something we chose to do. We did get a lot of, I would tell my friends, like, oh, we're going to Mebane. They're like, you're going to Mebane? It's like, yeah, we're choosing to go to Mebane. And I am as well part of the PTSA. And that's what just exactly what Terry said. We want to bring the people from the other areas, come over to the school, help us build the school. We have a great new principal, Mr. Gamble. He came from Bishop as well, so we really have confidence that we can do this, and we would really love to have other support. So we're not scary. It's okay. We're all, good people. The question I did have is with the Terwilliger, I know that they took the students from the school that was over on the other side of town and brought them there. Are they also going to continue to stay there, or is this, okay, that was the question I had, because I didn't know how they were all going to combine with the possible rezoning. Okay, so the rezoning, they will move.
Some of them are moving out.
Some of them will move
some
out
moving
of
out
it.
as
Okay,
well.
okay, that's just the question. Again, my child, it will not affect my child, but it'll affect my neighborhood. So, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Ms. Casper. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? I think we've gotten everyone. Anyone else? Okay.
All right, at this point, we would like to walk everybody through the survey results of the questions. Did everybody have a chance to fill out that survey? It's the signal. Okay, lack of the signal. We have hard copies. Yeah, that'd be great. And we can track it, so.
What is it a survey for? How the meeting went?
No. It's about the rezoning process. Input about the rezoning process.
Based on that policy 5120, they'd like you to rank which are the most important, and then like your top question and suggestion. It will take you like 5 minutes.
Regarding the data questions gentlemen brought up, are you guys going to try to?
There's going to be more, for example, at the workshop, the vendor that we're working with, the DRMP company, is going to be there, and that is going to be aired and videotaped, and you can watch that later. And they are the definitely data folks, so they'll be doing a lot of the explanation of that data.
What about?
Excuse me, can I get you to come to the mic because the tape is still running, and so that folks will be able to hear you, if you would, please.
I'm gonna lean over like this. Thank you. That's so. My previous, when other counties or states have rezoned schools, what has been the outcome? Have you looked at that data regarding, what can we expect? Mental health, economically, all of the above?
That's not a question that I can answer. Because the last time we did it was 40 years ago, as far as comprehensively, that this district did it. I can tell you when I was in Orange County, I worked for Orange County Public Schools for 5 years. We were building 5 or 6 schools every year when I was there. And kids adjusted. My own child was one of them.
Right,
yeah.
but that's anecdotal, right? So what if we look at overall, what does a trend look like?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we ever did a survey of how is your kid's mental health now post as opposed to.
Not specifically just mental health, just overall. Does this shake out appropriately for all parties involved, or is this just something that the county's going to push on families and it's not going to positively impact us?
Again,
I don't know how to answer
I don't know how.
2002, there was a rezoning, and my children, I'm not sure, Ms. McGraw, were your children moved during the 2002? Oh, yeah. So our children were moved, and we moved out of Talbot into Norton. My family did. My daughter did. And instead of going to Fort Clark, our son went to Westwood instead of Buchholz, Gainesville High. So our neighborhood, and our children, my children did fine. I have an electrician and a pharmacist for I mean, you know, I mean, they adjusted. We were frantic. I didn't want to move,
It just seems interesting because there certainly has to be plenty of data out there, I would believe. And so it's like pushing something like this without actual proof that it's going to benefit if it's going to benefit all parties involved. Like, how can you expect to get our support?
But it's recorded. I hear your point, and I think it's well taken. So we'll take it because this is comprehensive rezoning, and our children went through rezoning. It's not comprehensive. However, your point is taken.
Thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home.